Again, thank you for joining us, and now we will hear from Rick. Thank you, Rick, for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite. I've been doing this since 1985. And believe it or not, there was an insurance crisis in 1985. You go back and look at the newspapers, Wall Street Journal, there was an insurance crisis. They just wouldn't insure certain people. They were uninsurable. I call them the land of the misfit toys. And, I insured them. Helicopter ski guides, mountain climbing, rafting in the Grand Canyon, horseback riding in West Virginia, anything in any state that had to do with the recreational activities. They said it was uninsurable and release forms are no good. And this is all the insurance experts and all the lawyers who were experts too. What I tell people now is, all of these so-called experts, none of them risk their own money. They're all, you guys risk your own money in business. And because I'm dumb enough to form an insurance company, because after 15 years of being an agent, I thought these guys are stupid. All of them are stupid. There's nothing in the insurance world or the legal world that makes common sense. So I just started calling bullshit on people. First case I took to the Supreme Court in California where they said release forms were no good. And guess what the Supreme Court said? Release forms are good. So it changed the world. Okay. So, I insured the Rolling Stones concert during COVID. As a little kid, I went to Evil Knievel's Jump of the Snake Canyon when I was 12. My dad wrote the Spectator event liability insurance. So I was pretty cool. Well, guess what? There's a guy this year going to reenact it. He needs insurance. Guess who he's calling? Me. So all the big insurance companies and all the big brokers and agents don't like me, right? They don't want to bring business to me. And I would tell you that in most cases, it's because, like, if you're a Florida homeowners or California homeowners and you have an event and it fails you, your agent and broker got paid and they provided a failing product. The industry did. And then the rates triple. And guess who makes more money every time rates go up? Agents or brokers. So I'm the guy that takes the risk now. Since 94, I got fed up and said, I'm not dealing with stupid people anymore. I'm going to form my own insurance company and I'm going to do the right thing. Right? When you're at fault, you pay quick and the lawyers can't mess with you. Right? When you're not at fault and it's frivolous, you have to fight or you're giving your business away just like you give your lunch money away to the bully on the playground. Now, I describe everything we do as a sport because I played sports, but in football, you have out of bounds, the whole field, and then you have the hash marks in the middle of the field. Insurance approaches it from a defensive position. Defense lawyers, right? I don't like defense lawyers because when we're right, we need an offensive lawyer. We need somebody who knows how to fight back. So I always tell these guys, I'm like, you guys are crappy because you think the out of bounds lines are the hash marks. And the plaintiff's lawyers, they play the whole field. And if you play it within the hash marks, you are always going to lose. And that's what happens. Insurance companies settle 98% of all claims, and they do it after they've spent a shit ton of money, deposed everybody, 3 years, spent all kinds of money, and then you pay anyway. That I don't do that. So I've won 4,000 lawsuits that lawyers told me I couldn't win. And the way I do that is with good partners. You're my partner. My insureds are my partners. So Lancer Insurance Company, who's insured many of you, RLI, who's done it. I'm an Illinois domiciled company. RLI actually owns 24% of my company. But when they write you, I'm not a player, right? When they cancel you and they won't write you because of the state you're in or a prior claim, that's when I'm your partner. I do not compete with stupid. right? And most insurance, if you ever use it, it goes away or it changes, right? That's not a partnership. That's where you're getting a slow walk to a place you don't want to go. So one of the biggest lawsuits that I, won this year, and it's, to me, it's busing, or related businesses to transportation. So if a bus gets in a crash on the way to a lodge, in most cases, if you take people to an event or a location, you have to name MGM or somebody as an additional insured, right? So, I insure helicopter ski guides, right? We don't insure the helicopters. They come from companies who rent them to other people, right? And they do logging, whatever they do, and then they come to us and they do the transport just like a bus. So this helicopter crashes, and there was a Czechoslovakian billionaire on it, and AIG insured the helicopter. They named my lodge as an additional insured. So some lawyer up there in AIG determined that they aren't going to settle for the lodge. They'll take the helicopter settlement, and then they'll get another $1 million from the lodge's policy. So to me, this is the type of stuff that lawyers sit out there and imagine. Now, I've been doing this since 1985. Frank Wells, who was the chairman of Disneyland, died similarly in Nevada back in the 80s, right? They named the lodge as an additional insured, so they have to settle the claim for the lodge, right? If they didn't name the lodge, then yeah, the lodge would have a separate claim and they would have to pay it. So, this is going to affect the world of transportation if AIG and this lawyer in Alaska get away with this. And my insured, the lodge, they don't understand, right? I don't have to cover them, but because I'm a partner, not only with them, but with all the other operators in the country, I spend $2 million and I take AIG to the Supreme Court of Alaska, and Alaska tells AIG, you're in bad faith. You need to go settle that claim. You screwed up. So now, if we pay the $1 million separately, that gives lawyers a whole new Pandora's box of litigation, makes every claim bigger for the lawyers. So, again, insurance is a policy where people read the fine print to not pay, and it leaves you uncovered, right? That's not a partnership. That's a policy or multiple policies. And it, again, in hurricane claims, fire claims, you have many policies. You can track the litigation. Policies don't work well together, right? What you need is one policy that covers everything and does the right thing at the right time. So, I get all kinds of claims, death claims, accidents, 5-mile-an-hour accidents that aren't reported when they happen. And I always ask people, why don't you report your claims? And they say, well, it was under the deductible. Well, the policy doesn't say you don't report claims under your deductible, because when something happens, you never know how big it is, right? I have 5-mile-an-hour backup crashes where the guy wants $1.2 million, right? And his hood was damaged. How do you get to $1.2 million? But, I don't want to pay those claims. And I spend the money to go to court and fight. And we, as good partners, an insurance company and a good bus operator, need to have a reputation that, look, we can be at fault. And when we're at fault, we admit it quick and we pay. That's the cheapest claim you're ever going to have. When it's frivolous and the lawyers are trying to grow litigation or open a new Pandora's box like they were with this lodge case, that's going to hurt transporters and lodges and business owners of every kind, because there's no strategy. Insurance companies, agents and brokers will always ask me, what's your appetite? What do you want to write? Do you want to write buses? I'm like, I don't care, right? I want to write good people. There's good people in the bus business. There's good people in the trash business. There's good people in, recreation. It's the bad people that you really can't help because they're not a good partner. So to me, that is underwriting, picking good partners. And that's what I learned on the playground when I was a kid. And that's what I learned in sports. You can't do anything alone. You really can't accomplish great things alone. But if you have a team and a partner, you can overcome any bully on the planet. But you can't turn on each other, which is what insurance does. These guys have written buses forever, right? Now they don't want to write buses anymore. Now they don't want to write homeowners in California anymore. Isn't that their job? Right? Their job is to present a good partner. So what's the right rate for a bus company? Right? I mean, you guys in most cases have to carry 5 million limit. So the way that insurance does it, and I have a claim right now where it's not a bus, it's a trucking company. And, if you need a $5 million limit, I want to provide the whole 5 million, right? The regular insurance industry wants to sell you $1 million primary and then sell you multiple excess policies. That's a red flag. When you have multiple policies, everybody has different interests, right? So I have a claim right now where I'm trying to call the insured, and again, I think he's going out of business. He has a $250,000 deductible, right? The lawyers have made a demand for $1.2 million, and it's not a $30,000 claim. I said, dude, we can settle this for $250 easy, right? But now because it's a deductible, it's his $250. So the lawyer I hire, that I pay, but he's your lawyer, he's the insured's lawyer. That's the way this deal works. Me and you have to manage our lawyer, or they're going to separate us every time. So this lawyer goes to the excess carrier and they give him authority to $2 million. So now you got $3 million limit on a claim that's not worth $250, right? So they've already encouraged for this $250,000 claim to be made bigger. Or if I wrote the whole 5 million, I wouldn't be dealing with some stupid excess carrier who's willing to pay $2 million of their 4 because they think they're saving money, right? They know nothing about the claim. I know about the claim. So I actually told the agent and broker, I'm like, you know what? I know why you didn't tell me that you needed excess. And it's because they make more commission by having a separate policy. And in many cases, it's a cheaper rate, right? But in the long run, now it's going to cost them $3 million. And, whether he pays me his $250 deductible or not, I still have to pay the claim. So one of my biggest problems, if I look back on commercial auto and buses, people make deals and they don't live up to their end of the bargain. And so I end up having, I'm the insurance company. I never get to say, no, I can't pay your claim. If you say I'll have a $50,000 deductible and then you won't pay it, that's my problem, right? So when we strike deals, it has to be something that, you're comfortable. I'll do my job. I have 43-year history, $400,000 claims. The biggest claim I ever had on a bus, well, now I have one here in Idaho where I'll probably pay $5 million. They ran off the road. Lewis Brothers, one of the big bus companies here. The other one was Mr. Hose in New Jersey. I wrote the primary million. Gen Re gave me 4x of 1. They thought we were going to pay the whole 5 million because everybody on the bus was injured. We settled all the claims for $700,000. But I don't outsource my claims. You and me and our people manage the claims. We need to know more than the lawyers we hire, right? We need to fly the plane. You don't let the lawyers fly the plane, right? I have a case where a kid lost his leg in Florida, legal hellhole, which is total bullshit. All these legal hellhole, labels are made to scare people and insurance companies in those areas. I win lawsuits everywhere when the facts are in our favor. So this kid loses his leg, sad case. Early on, we decide it's his fault. He's drunk. He's not a licensed motorcycle driver. He's going 90 in a 30, and he hits our truck. I feel really bad that he lost his leg, but the law is you have to be liable. If you're not liable, he can't get anything from you. But everybody wants to say, oh, it's illegal, hellhole juries, they're going to give him money. So I agree with my insured up front. We're fighting this one. He's like, hell yeah, we're fighting. 3 years later, we spent $300,000. We're ready to go to court, and the lawyer tells him, you should tell Rick to settle this claim. It's a $10 million claim. So he calls me up and says, Rick, I want to settle this claim. Your lawyer says it's a $10 million claim. I'm like, number one, he's not my lawyer. He's a lawyer in Florida that I hired to defend good cases. And they're always going to tell you to settle after they've billed their money. That's when you have to tell them no. And in most cases, you complain as the insured that the insurance company paid anyway, that you told them you didn't want them to pay, but they paid, overpaid a claim, overspent it. And I know that's not true most of the time. Most of the time you tell them to pay because you want the insurance company to be exposed for a higher limit. It's called bad faith. And that's the game, right? So we have to be on the same team. So this guy says, well, it's a $10 million claim. I'm like, dude, it isn't a $10 million claim. You're not at fault. If you were at fault, it could be a $10 million claim, but you only have $1 million limit and I can settle it for the $1 million, right? We just should have tendered it when it happened and they would have to take it. But now we're 3 years down the road. We spent $300,000. What are you afraid of? He says, I could lose my business. And I'm like, if you have to pay these frivolous claims, you don't have a business. You should tell them, hey, come take my trucks, because I'm not building anything here if you're like the bully on the playground and you can just take my money every day. So he goes to court in Miami-Dade and we win a jury trial. They give us zero. The plaintiff gets zero and they have to pay our court costs now. So, the court systems are fair, but you have to invest the time and the money and make the right decisions, or you end up with, release forms are no good in California. And I proved that wrong in the late 80s. And I've won 4,000 lawsuits since then. Not one of them has the lawyer said we should fight. That's up to me and you based on what we know and using the system. You're never going to win being afraid, right? The only reason you'd be afraid is because you're lying or you're cheating or you're stealing. If you're doing the best you can in life and you're doing the right thing and you lose, you kind of need to know. Because if you give up before you know, you never know. So to me, it's just common sense. And when lawyers and insurance guys start telling me I don't understand, I wanted to be $100 million a year company. I do about 450 million a year now, all 50 states. I manage all the litigation. I didn't go to college. I'm not a lawyer, but I run a very successful insurance company. I'm familiar with Lancer, RLI, the other people who say they do buses. And I'm well aware of the fact that they're, retracting from the market, it's a tough market. But good operators should be able to get good, stable insurance that when the worst happens, it doesn't go away because we have a plan. To me, I'm a helicopter pilot, and I look at it like, you're giving your money to people who, it's like a guy giving me my ticket to fly and I crash on my emergency landing every time. if you crash every time, you wouldn't get your license. So to me, it's sad that insurance is, such an old, outdated machine that none of the efficiencies of the internet, of communication, and, just we don't need AI. We just need a good operator and a good insurance company to pay attention and do the right thing. And what insurance companies do is they hire other people, right? They send out an adjuster. Why are you sending out an adjuster with a clipboard? Right? It should be me and you, and we fix the problem. We don't involve more people that get paid fees and all kinds, and they delay stuff. Just make good decisions early on. Feel like you can report your claims to your insurance company. But at renewal, I know a lot of people don't report that last, you know, 6 months because they want a clean loss run so they can go get a cheaper quote, but it's fake. Right? When I see clean loss runs, I'm like, come on, guy. I know you have claims. I just don't want to see your loss runs. I want to see the claims you've paid out of your own bank account. Because if you got deductibles and stuff and you're paying claims that you're not reporting, that's part of the deal that I want to pay. And on every claim, I want to pay a percentage. I don't like deductibles. You can pay 1% and I'll pay 99, or you can pay 5% and I'll pay 95. So instead of, I don't know what deductibles do you guys have currently in most cases? Do you have ground up, zero deductible? Anybody want to help me out?
Most deductibles are either 5,000 or 10,000.
Yeah, so again, that 10,000 would be 1%. So if you had a $10,000 claim, you'd pay 1,000, I'd pay 9,000. That's a partnership. Now our interests are aligned, you report everything, and in most cases, you'd say, well, shit, I'm normally paying 10, and most of my claims are under 100, so I can probably take 5%. So if you had a $100,000 claim, you'd pay 5,000, I'd pay 95,000. But our interests are aligned, and the same with excess, right? If we write the first million and we got a guy above us that writes 4 million excess, his interests are not aligned with ours. His interests are totally different. And so I issue the whole 5 million. In some cases, I'll go get reinsurance from Gen Re or one of the big reinsurers, but it's my policy and we deal with the claim up to 5 million. Some cases I go to Gen Re and the big reinsurers and they don't want to write it because of the location or your history. I can issue up to a $20 million limit on my own. That's how I did the Rolling Stones concert during COVID. Is everybody else is trying to get $1 million. I mean, I quote the Miami Heat Stadium, they have 38 policies and they're $10 million layers. And I'm like, that is a total red flag, dude. Along with your $35 million deductible you can't pay, right? I'll give you one policy and I'll cover the first 30 million, we'll share 50-50. That cuts your risk in half. It's a totally different approach. It's revolutionary, and none of these big guys are ever going to do it. They're going to keep adding more fine print and exiting certain states, and it just trends in a certain way. And or they're going to try and start selling you captives, right? Anybody who forms a captive, you're going to get your lunch ate, dude. You're going to pay more than you ever paid before. And all these insurance people want to collect fees. They don't want to take any risk. I'm the guy risking my own money, which, started out with a little pile of $700,000. Now it's a lot more than that. But I really don't give a shit how much money I got. I don't sit around and add it up and count it. Everything I got is in this business because I believe that I can revolutionize the insurance business for good operators in any class of business. I can look at your loss runs And I can tell you, I could have saved you money on every one by making good decisions early on if we make that together. Even if you want to pay a bullshit claim, let's just do it early. I don't want to pay bullshit claims, right? So we don't have to agree, but we got to agree the play we're going to run and then run that play on that claim. So, you know, instead of spending $300,000 and paying $1 million, I would just soon pay the $1 million. If we're going to spend the $300,000 and time deposing people and hiring experts, and that's an investment in a good result. And we have to, I had one guy say, dude, I'm tired. This has been going on for 3 years. And I'm like, so do you think that's what a Super Bowl team says in the Super Bowl on the 1 yard line? I'm tired. You know, this is a play and a plan and a strategy that we have to execute all the way through. And the next question everybody always says, well, what if you lose? You know the answer? When you're right, you appeal. And if you're not right, you shouldn't have ever lost. You should have just paid it. So, you know, again, to me, it's way more simple than all these educated lawyers and insurance companies want to make this. And it's up to you and me. They work for us. They collect money. They get paid. I don't get paid. I collect money. In New Jersey, I run at 100 combined, which is very disappointing to me because I do much better than that, right? But New Jersey is a screwed up state. Now the trucks have to carry 1.5 million instead of 1 million limit, which who does that help? The lawyers. And so in a tough state, they've made it tougher. You know, every year I get assessed for their assigned risk pool, which is like, you know, their state insurance plan for auto. I've paid about 90 grand a year for the last 5 years. You want to know what the bill they sent me yesterday was for last year? $11.4 million. So all the guys who lost money, they get to send me and the other companies that are writing commercial auto there a bill for their poor result. I'm like, dude, I am leaving New Jersey. That's double taxation. That's taxation without representation. It's poor I don't know what, call it anything you want, but it doesn't make sense. And I ain't gonna like sit here and be quiet about it. I'm gonna tell people why New Jersey has a bigger problem than other states. It's politicians. It's that simple. So, and most of those are lawyers. So, you know, I've been writing in New Jersey, and again, my deal is rates in New Jersey got to go up, right? That adds 10 points to my combined ratio. So, you know, it's like anything else. Pass on the price. But there's enough money out there that if we stop doing shit the way we've done it for 100 years, because that's the way we've done it, and we do it new, wipe the chalkboard clear and have a real simple common sense plan where the insured and the insurance company are the partners, and we hire these people, but we pay them for what they do and what they accomplish, which we only need, you know, I only need a lawyer when we're going to trial. I don't need a lawyer to bill me $300,000 to pay $1 million. It's kind of like a good divorce, right? I've never had a good divorce. I've had just the bad kind where you pay lawyers all your money and then you split whatever pile of money you have left. And you could have just paid a lawyer $350 and split the stuff and you'd have both been better off. And I think, you know, I can tell you so many stories out of New York, doctor, millionaire die out here in an avalanche. And, you know, most people would have just waited, right? What we do is we work with the guy that owns the guiding company. He goes to the funeral, he's dealing with the family, and we're transparent with him. we communicate with them. We say, look, I'm the owner of the company. I'm not trying to hide from you. I want to do the right thing. If you're out of pocket any money, I want to make sure you're not out of pocket. But you can always get a lawyer and sue me for millions, but that's going to be based on me being liable and you being able to prove your damages. And we can do that without a lawyer. If you think I'm liable, tell me what I'm liable for. I'll tell you why I don't think I'm liable. So we settled that claim for $30,000. Right. And I've done that thousands of times. But you have to step up as the business owner, because why do people sue you? Because they hate you. They think you didn't do something you should have done. And, there's people who are just sue happy and they're going to sue everybody. They never have a real claim. And that's we really can't change that except not pay them. Just wait them out and let the facts run it through. But the big ones where you can, pay $1 million and save the 300,000, or like this one, save the million and the 300,000 and settle for 30 grand up front, because you're talking directly to the injured person or the person who's managing their estate. Right. And then, in that case, the lawyer, we send them the release for $30,000. So, oh, my brother-in-law is a lawyer, we want to have him look at it. Okay. He gets involved. We talk with him. He signs it. We send him the 30 grand. But, we don't want to pay millions on something like that. But I guarantee you're going to when you don't reach your hand out as the business owner. Right? Any business owner should say, look, I'm concerned. If we did something wrong, I want to learn from it. Right? And if we did something wrong, I want to take care of you. And we have the insurance to do that. But you guys don't feel like you have a partner. Right? That's why deductibles are bad. And in most cases, deductibles are going to go up. That's the insurance company's solution. And to me, that's the worst solution there is. I would rather have no deductible. But I think risk share aligns our interests. I don't want you to take more risks than you can take. Some guys say, I want to take the first million of 5. And like, dude, that's a lot. I'm not sure you want to risk that much on one claim. How about, you take 25% of the first million and 25% of the next 4. That would make more sense on spreading it out. And, Warren Buffett, if he gives me a quote, he gets the money, he gets 20% of the premium, he pays 20% of the claim, right? You can do that same thing. Instead of me giving Warren Buffett the money, we keep the money and it builds up in your claims account. It's called a virtual captive. Warren Buffett doesn't help me. The only reason he reinsures me is when he thinks he's going to make money. But he ain't going to fight with me and you and on the front lines of this legal battle that as a businessman, you have to be able to survive or you're really not building a business. And, I know because I've lived building my own business. And it's a lot better with good partners than people who claim they're a good neighbor who then point to the fine print in the policy when they're not going to pay your claim. So I just want to be real. I want to deal with real people. I can issue in almost all states, and I'm going to try and continue to issue in New Jersey. I'm not going to withdraw from the state, but I really can't. You couldn't afford to get a bill for $11.4 million. Nobody can. It's ridiculous. So anyway, I'm happy to, if you have a favorite agent or broker, you have a favorite lawyer, hey, I need good people, right? But a lot of again, I'll just be transparent with you, right? Most of these policies, the costs of the policy are, what is your expense ratio? Right? So if you give me $1 million, how much of that goes out of the bucket to issue you a policy? Does anybody know? Is there any insurance agents or brokers on here?
No, mostly just operators.
So, I mean, you go look at RLI or Lancer, 40 cents of every dollar is gone immediately. Paid up front, right? As an insurance company, I have to reserve 60% for losses, and then I have to reserve unearned premium and spread it out month by month. So it costs me like $1.60 to take in a buck. And that over the year, it earns out, right? But initially, the agents and brokers, boom, they get their money up front, right? So my model is I don't pay that. My expense ratio is 22.
You
So
know,
it's half. It's half of what the industry is.
so how much does the broker make? I know some brokers when they talk about you, they don't like it, like Prime.
Yeah, because I don't pay them as much commission as they want. So Margaritaville, the hotel in Fort Myers, brand new, their premium was $700,000. They had a $23 million claim. That was the first year they were open. They can't get insurance, right? So, and they still haven't been paid on that claim. So I write them and I include everything. Any difference in the condition of the building, I'm paying 80% of, and they're paying 20. They'd have a $10 million deductible before. So my premium's $2 million versus 700,000. And this broker who I know really well, he's very pissed off at me because I'm paying him 70 grand. He's like, dude, I deserve 200 grand. I'm like, why do you deserve to make more money when the policy you sold them last year is no good and hasn't paid, and they have to pay an increased premium? What did you do that means that you're more valuable, right? And I'm going to pay a claim, right? So 2 storms hit that year, right? I paid out over $4.5 million and I collected 2, and the agent got 70 grand. He shouldn't have done anything. I pulled his ass out of the ringer, but he doesn't like me because he deserves $200,000. And it's based on the premium increase, right? Most things in life, it's the work you do and the value you bring to the table. When people's insurance rates go up, commissions just shouldn't keep growing. That doesn't make sense to me since I'm taking risk, right? So, hey, they could get into my game anytime they wanted, right? They could form their own insurance company and they can pay the higher commissions and see how they like it. I know that they wouldn't like it very much because all of these big brokers used to own insurance companies. 20 years ago, Aon, all of them had an insurance company. Guess what? Guess what they all did? Sold them. They don't want to take any risk. So my model, I pay agents 10% of the commission, right? That's normally what an agent gets. And if we all make money and your rates come down, they have a profit sharing agreement that they can earn up to 22.5. So my model, rewards everybody. What they say to me is, Rick, we get 22.5 up front. And I'm like, yeah, well, that doesn't mean you deserve it. So, I'm not doing it the old fashioned way. I'm not paying you for not adding value, right? It can't just keep going this way. Something's got to give. Something has to get more. So you think about, when I started this business in 85, you had an agent, had an office with all these people. Then you had an MGA with an office, all these people. Then you had an insurance company. All of those people run different systems. And they have all these people, right? With technology and phones today, it should be one system, right? All of these guys should be working off of my system. And they shouldn't have to, do it the way they did in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But they still do. They
So,
want to do it that way.
so you
Like, dude,
mean
I
by
got 20
eliminating?
people.
I'm
I got
sorry.
20 people here. I got to keep them all busy. I'm like, well, you guys are entering it all, and I'm entering it all, and the other guy's entering it all. It's stupid duplication.
So Rick, so you're saying by, I guess you're implementing that coming you directly can save a operator pretty much a few dollars on their premium.
Well, no, what it does is so when you pay premium into a bucket and claims go out of it, the expenses that aren't part of the claims, right, to process and manage the policy. So you put $1 million in a bucket, you think there's $1 million up there. If you have $800,000 in claims, that's an 80% loss ratio, right? Well, if $400,000 leaked out on the expense side, you're not profitable. That's $1.2 million in claims and expense, and you only paid them $1 million. So anything that leaks out of the bucket, you need to be concerned with. Anything you can keep in the bucket makes our loss ratio better. So fundamentally, reducing the expenses up front so you have more in the claim bucket means your loss ratio is less.
So, Rick, we've got a couple of questions, and I know we're coming back to home plate here. Let's see. Loretta asked, do you work directly with companies or only through brokers?
Wow.
And the other question was, what about a mutual insurance company? Is that a viable option for passenger bus transportation companies instead of captives? And then Kate has her hand raised, and if you can answer those, then we'll go to Kate and let her ask her own question.
Okay, again, a mutual is just a type of an insurance company. When you form an insurance company, you have to get licensed in all these states. So that normally takes a very long time, right? That's why a lot of people will front, right? Like Trisura and Kent. There's a bunch of companies out there that just rent their paper, right? They just have the licenses. You take all the risk. You have to buy reinsurance. The problem with forming an insurance company is you're reinventing the wheel. I would tell you that, what you want to do is find a company like Prime that has a very low expense ratio compared to the industry. So, the industry average is 40, mine is 20. That's fundamentally what I set this up to do. Now, obviously, I do that by not paying agents higher commissions. They can earn it down the road with success. So, fundamentally, you want a good licensed insurance company with a rating that can execute and manage claims nationwide with the lowest expense ratio. Because that means your loss ratio is going to be improved because less of the money is sucked out. And that's really what people look at on your loss runs is, what are you burning at, right? And I mean, I can show you some, companies that say they're getting out of the commercial and bus business and their loss ratios were 40, then they went to 80, now they're like 198%. That's what all insurance companies look at is their combined ratio. Combined ratio is your expenses plus your claims. So, my combined ratio is normally under 100. Commercial auto was up, 140, and I've got it back down to 100. But the 140, I have, some bad operators that I have personal guarantees from, and I am suing them, and, I'll probably make up, 10 million of that loss, but I have to sue them to get them to live up to their agreements. And, I do have strong agreements. I know how to execute nationwide. So as far as, I'm an insurance company. I started out as a broker. X Insurance is my brokerage. I operate nationwide. I file taxes nationwide. So you can go directly to X Insurance, right? And I place it with my own insurance company, Prime Insurance Company. if you have an agent that you like or a broker, they can go to X Insurance. All these guys, Assured Partners, Hub, they all do business with me, right? So you can get to me any way you want. Obviously, that's your decision. I don't care. They don't like me because I'm trying to change the world and they want things to stay the way they are and they want to be overpaid when, the market's in turmoil. That doesn't make sense to me. I'm coming to the table trying to fix a problem that everybody else is running away from. The agents need a market. They're desperate to help their clients. So, they shouldn't get paid more when things are tough. That's common sense to me. If it all works out in the long run and they're a good partner, my biggest problem is I save people when they're in trouble, and then the agents take them to a cheaper market that doesn't do it the right way. And you get back to overpaying claims, wasting money. And the only thing your insurance should do is make a claim less painful, right? And bring you success by successfully managing claims. If you have an at-fault accident, we should deal with that. That's part of our job. And, you do everything possible to be the best operator, just like me. When shit goes bad and you need your partners to stand by you and stick with you through the tough times and the good times, that's what your insurance partnership should be. Not where it's hanging on a thread and, people are like, I don't know if we should report this one. Our renewal's coming up in 30 days, they'll just add that to the problem. And that shows me that people know that it's not a partnership. Everything's hanging on a thread. That is not a way to build a business. So I deal with wholesalers that have a retailer below them. At this point, I've taken them all out of play, right? If I write business for a broker or an agent, I file the taxes as X Insurance. So I am the broker and the insurance company. And I did that because I get audited by each state to pay the taxes that Hub or Assured Partners were supposed to pay, and they didn't pay them, right? And it might have just been a mistake. But guess who gets to pay them and the fine? Me, right? Everything goes back to the insurance company because if the agent or broker screws up, you know what they say? Well, you shouldn't have appointed them. Right? So
Okay.
I get blamed for everybody. So again, when you involve an agent or broker, I'm going to talk directly with you as I have done with the people I insure in the bus industry already.
All right. Kate, can you state your question?
I deal on the line run side over charter, when I know majority of people here are charters, but we discover with a lot of our partners that they get penalized or their premiums go up because of the industry as a whole is very high risk. So you have major nationwide carriers. I don't necessarily need to name names, but it's very simple to Google them, that get in accidents, I would say daily, if not weekly, and they are not small, as you mentioned at the beginning of your discussion points. However, that impacts some of our smaller carriers, and the same thing goes with some of our smaller charter carriers that do regional versus national. And I'm curious from your perspective, why carriers that are good stewards of the bus business and don't have accidents every week or monthly or even have one a year end up having their premiums increased, because the nationwide understanding is that the bus business is extremely risky. So can we, as an industry, I'm not saying you're going to know this answer, but from somebody from my perspective is I can provide granular data for each carrier that runs per miles, per customers, per specific regions, for a bus carrier to be assessed on a bus carrier level, not a nationwide level. So I'm curious if there is any appetite for that, to keep premiums low versus going up every year based on a national understanding of what the bus business is.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that that's not just a bus industry phenomenon, right? I mean, if you insure any class of business, there's the people who have really good experience, they manage their business better, and they don't escalate things. And so they have fewer claims. And, I can give you the names of people that I've insured since 1985 and because we've been partners for 35 years, doesn't matter what happens to anybody else, right? When you buy insurance like avocados at the grocery store, and there's no partnership, no long-term play, it's just like I'm buying the cheapest thing because that's what I want, then you end up with the insurance companies always using anything, right? It's like, Clarence, you didn't have a claim, but Bob did. So we got to increase your rates because Bob did. And I would think, well, that's bullshit, right? My relationship with my partners is my relationship. Why are you bringing in Bob? You wrote Bob. If I owned the insurance company, I probably wouldn't have written Bob, right? And I've dealt with this for years. Everybody in the industry talks, right? And so people will call me up and say, hey, I know you insured my buddy, and he told me he gets this rate. And I'm like, well, I can't discuss that with you, but my relationships are individual relationships, right? Because somebody over here that's a bad apple, whether I insured them or not, had a claim, and it might hit my reinsurers, right? If I write you and you've never had a claim, but Warren Buffett wrote another bus company and I get 4x1 from them and they want to change the rate now, I don't have to buy their reinsurance. So I keep your rate the same because we have a partnership. But, that's something that we have to review every year as far as what are our goals, right? What do we want to do? The mutual captive or the mutual insurance company, mutual companies are really being demutualized because insurance companies have found out that they can, put a lot of money in their pocket by taking a mutual to a public company. And again, they're old for most cases. I don't know that there's many new mutual companies formed. What I would say is that why would you form a company, right? Well, because you believe that in the future, the insurance premiums and the way that we manage claims is going to produce a profit. And you want to capture some of that profit. You don't want me to pay it to Warren Buffett, right? So I insure the biggest tow truck AAA operator in the country. And, he was going to form a captive. And I'm like, dude, forming a captive is going to cost you 800 grand in fees up front. And then annually, the captive managers bill you a fee. They buy you reinsurance. You have to share reinsurance with there's all these things that you end up doing, spending all kinds. You just want to be a good bus company. I don't know that you want to get into the insurance business, but so he had some really bad claims, really tough position. His premium is well over $4 million. His brother runs an operation in Texas, and we're doing the same for him. So again, $4 million. He's like, dude, that's a lot of money. And I'm like, it's just math, right? And I know I can bring that down if we work together. So let's form you a virtual captive. There is no cost, right? You take 25% of the risk. I would send that 25% of the premium to Warren Buffett, right? So instead of sending it to him, we put it in your claims account, right? Your claims fund, that's your money. You're writing it off as premium, but instead of it going to a reinsurer, it goes into your claims account. And again, credit-wise, I'm taking 100% of the risk anyway. If I give it to Warren Buffett, then he's got the exposure, and that's called certified reinsurance, and I get accounted. When I put the money in your account, it's not reinsurance, but we have the money. So it's not a credit risk to me. And that is your pile of money that builds up over time. So 5 years from now, you've paid $4 million in premium. You kept 20% of the risk. So $200,000 here, $800,000 is sitting in there. It's your money. You say, hey, Rick, I need 300,000 of that. We do a claim report. And as long as the claims run comes out to where we can release it, just like a reinsurer would, which is normally like 3 years, right? Because as a lawsuit goes on, you don't know where it's at till it comes to an end. So again, it's a long play, but you know, he renewed with me. We did 75-25, and he's got cameras. He's got, you know, he is doing everything humanly possible, which is, you know, again, you guys, I'm sure you're doing all the things to improve your business, whether it's cameras, you know, safety devices on the new buses you buy. You know, there's ways that you're improving your risk. If you spend that money to get a different result and have partners that manage the claims the same way, and or you want to settle claims the same way you have because you've been encouraged to, you're wasting your money. Right? So this guy, he's so confident, he comes back and he's like, I want to take 50% of the risk. Right? And that, to me, that's better, right? There's no better world than me and you bleeding 50-50. But, you know, if you can't afford to bleed 50-50, I don't want to put you under any undue stress. I learned that with, you know, back in the day when I had a quadriplegic case on a river trip. A kid dove into the river when he was told not to, and all the lawyers were trying to scare everybody. And, you know, we fought the claim and won. And the insurance company was like, well, you know, we want to settle it. And I'm like, well, what are you risking? Right? They're risking $1 million. They're $100 million company. And the insured was willing to risk his business. Right? And they said, well, what's it worth? And I said, it's probably worth 300 grand. He says, oh, that's nothing. And I'm like, that's where you miss the point, my friend. You think you have no situational awareness. You're not willing to risk $1 million. This guy believes in himself. He's willing to risk it all. That makes me feel good, right? If you don't want to risk anything, if you come to me and you want me to insure your $4 million car, you want to go race at the track, I always think, you think I'm that stupid, you rich guy? I wouldn't pay $4 million for a car, number one. And I know if you go race it without insurance, you're going to be safe. My concern is the minute I take that risk away from you and now you're risk free, you'll go crash that thing in a heartbeat. And I had a guy do that. He hadn't had insurance for 18 years, races every weekend. First day I give him insurance, he crashes a $400,000 car. So, you know, there's kind of a method to, you know, why would I take all the risk? We want to share risk. That's how we make sure our interests are aligned. So, you know, you can come directly to me. You can come through an agent. You know, I'll get your reinsurance quotes. And if the reinsurance market's there, we'll use that to our advantage. If the reinsurance market goes away, I'm not going to change my deal with you because I can do it 100% in-house. But, you know, it's good for us to check what the market is, right? If Gen Re wants $50,000 a bus for 4X a one, that's a lot of money. I can do it for less than that. If they'll give it to us for 10 grand, which sometimes they do, because they think it's a good state or a good zip code, or they like your type of operation. And, you know, I've insured all kinds of operations, local, charter, bus lines, the new one here from European, I don't remember the name of it, but you guys know the name of it. It's, you know, like Greyhound, but it's a Flex bus.
It's Flixbus.
Yeah, I mean, I've insured them. I've insured them for many, many years. So, you know, it's just facts.
Rick, we thank you for the wealth of information. We're closing in on home plate a little bit over. We're 4:02. We normally wrap up in an hour. The question that most people have put in the chat is how to contact you. So it'd be great if you could just tell us how we can reach you directly.
You can reach me at rjl@xinsurance.com. That's the letter X, the word insurance, all together. Or you can call me on my cell, 801-918-4146. And, you know, I've been doing this 43 years. I bought a boat once, and in the manual, it had President's Hotline, and I called it. Guess what happened? The president answered. I thought that's the coolest thing ever. So that's what I do, right? Everybody I talk about, you have direct access to me. And again, I grow and hire new people, just like you guys. Shit happens. One of my guys might make a mistake. One of them might say something stupid. I can fix it if you call me. Right? If you don't call me, I can't fix it. And I have diffused more lawyers and, head trouble off at the pass by being available. That, people who were trying to make you look like a dirtbag, they say, well, I've tried to call you. We've sent 13 emails. And I always say, look, I am so glad you called me. I'm just sad you didn't call me sooner. Let me check into this. And they're always lying. All those guys that say that, and they're trying to set it up like you're a bad guy. And when you disappear and you act like a bad guy and, you're too important to take phone calls, then you play into that trap. So more people hang up because I answer my phone because, they don't want to actually talk to me. They just want to say they tried to call me and they, couldn't get a hold of me. Well, I can prove that's not accurate.
Well, we really had a wealth of information from you, and somebody wanted me to ask you to repeat the number one more time. And
801-801-918-4146.
Great, thank you. I'm sure many of the members here will be reaching out to you. I saw some positive looks on faces. So again, we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to give us the inside scoop. It's a very transparent view of insurance rates. If nothing else, we learned a lot from what you've just shared with us. And, I can't appreciate you enough. But if we don't have any other business, Rasha or Lou, do we have anything else we need to discuss?
No, thank you, Rick. We
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
Yep. I'm happy to be helpful anytime. Most people don't like me, but I just do what I do, and I'm too old to change now. So, and now I know I'm right. I used to think I was onto something. Now I know I'm definitely right, and I ain't wasting my time, trying to convince other people that the industry needs to change. I need to spend my time with people like you that hate insurance. My podcast is called I Hate Insurance. So if you want to go on there and see, I call myself the insurance preacher because once I get going, I'm like, oh my gosh, I sound like a preacher. But it is in my blood. I don't know, why I was the guy put into place and why I sit now with a place to help good people. But that's all I do is I want to partner with good people and accomplish what other people say can't be done. So I appreciate you guys listening to the Insurance Preacher, and